Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. We're here to preview Purdue versus Michigan State. It is Tuesday, February 18th, a 7 o'clock tip on Peacock, 7 o'clock Eastern time on Peacock. So I think it's the second to last game for Purdue on Peacock this year. I think they have 2 on Fox and 1 on CBS. So no more Big Ten, no more FS1 for them. Peacock, CBS, Fox the rest of the way, with this one being on Peacock. Purdue, 2-game losing streak. Michigan State has lost 3 of their last 5, and even in both of their wins, they were down double digits in the second half. Both these teams need this game to, I don't know if get right's the right word, but get right and stay more competitive within the Big Ten race. So we'll break everything that you need to know down right here. Make sure to like, subscribe. If you turn on bell notifications, you'll get notified. We go live as soon as the game ends, especially on these away games. We'll be live minutes after the final buzzer. So, Kraig, throw it to you, just kind of your overall thoughts on Michigan State.
Well, I mean, I think obviously this is a huge game, right? And whether you think this is a game that decides the Big Ten championship or eliminates anybody from the race or anything like that, I don't know that I fully agree with that, because I think even with 5 losses, there's still a chance that somebody comes away with a share of the title in the Big Ten, even though Michigan somehow keeps winning these close games over and over and over again. There is a real possibility. But at that point, you're obviously relying more on help from others that are out there. And if you're Michigan State, you're not that Purdue's schedule down the stretch is super easy, but if you're Michigan State, you're looking at their schedule as they head down the home stretch, just Purdue, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan again. You need a game real bad right here if you want to be serious about staying in the Big Ten race. With everything that they have laying ahead of them. So I think it's just going to be a huge matchup. I've been to Breslin every time Purdue's played there for the last few years. Good environment, and certainly going to be rocking when Purdue goes up there tomorrow. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because if I'm thinking about this right, TKR, Braden, and Fletcher have never lost to Michigan State. Am I right in that?
I can quickly. I mean, they didn't lose last year to them. They did not lose the year before. Or not? Did they? Yeah, they beat Michigan State in the tourney too. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. You're right. They have not.
Yeah.
Well,
So 3
if you want to
guys.
count TKR's red shirt year, I guess technically.
Right. But outside of that, 3 guys that have never lost to Michigan State, which is kind of unbelievable, really, when you think about it, in terms of how good these 2 programs usually are. So are they going to continue that dominance in terms of the big 3 picking up another win against Michigan State, or is something finally going to break? I think this is a really interesting matchup when you just start talking about how Michigan State wants to play, what Purdue does really well defensively, and vice versa for these 2 teams. I know we're going to jump in and get into all of that. But Michigan State comes in with a 20-5 record overall. In Big Ten play, right, they're up to 3 losses now.
Yes.
I forgot to actually put that in my notes today. I always have that. But up to 3 losses now. So they'd be a half game back, or 1 game back, right, from Michigan. And obviously Purdue is 1 game back from that now with 4 losses. So big game. Michigan State comes in 21st in the net with their 5-4 in quad 1 games, 4-1 in quad 2 games. Obviously, they've got a couple of really nice wins against Illinois. Outside of that, though, like, their other 2 best wins are Ohio State and Oregon. So as they've run into some of the maybe upper tier type teams, you're starting to see that schedule break a little bit more, starting to pick up a few more losses along the way. Prior to that, in Big Ten play, they had losses against Kansas and Memphis, which are 2 kind of higher profile, top 25 type teams. So, you're kind of looking at Michigan State saying, can they do it? And they've got a really good chance here at home to pick up a win against Purdue, but Purdue's going to have a heck of a lot to say about that as well. Come in to this game overall ranked 17th in KenPom, 27th in offense, but more importantly, 13th in defense, and obviously really make their hay in terms of just having a huge rebounding advantage over teams that they have played so far this year. I'm not going to dive too much into the other KenPom stats because I think they're just going to kind of come out as we talk through this game strategy-wise from a defensive standpoint for Purdue. I guess the one last thing I will throw in there, this is the second team in a row that we're going to face that is really, really good at the free throw line, shooting 80.6%, fourth in the country from the charity stripe.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be there's definitely some worries for Purdue going into this game that, like Michigan State, they are 10 deep. We'll get into the players. They're starting to play their best players a little bit more, but they'll rotate through guys. They want to push the ball after makes or misses. Now, if they get in the half court, they're fine slowing it down and running offense. But they win on the margins. They dominate the glass. They dominate the free throw line. They dominate the paints. They dominate with their defense. They don't have any flashy superstars. I don't even know if they might get a player on one of the all Big Ten teams, but it wouldn't be shocking if they don't have one. And it's just how they're built with depth. They have the most bench points in the entire country. I believe they are. I had this pulled up. I think they're way up there in terms of fast break points too. Yeah, they're second in fast break points per game. They are first in percentage of points coming on fast breaks. 22% of their points on this season coming from fast breaks. So they do things differently, and maybe it limits the ceiling a little bit, but it puts them in every single ball game. All 5 of their losses are by 8 or less points. They lost to Kansas and Memphis by 8 apiece. USC by 6, UCLA by 2, IU by 4. Like, they're either winning games or they're losing close, and that's just kind of how this team has been built. Don't shoot threes, but like I said, they dominate the paint.
And it's interesting to me that they dominate from a fast break standpoint, because a team, when you look at actually how many turnovers they're creating or turnover percentage, isn't near as high as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so
Big Ten.
15th in the Big Ten in
or
terms
14th,
of creating.
14th, yeah, and defensive turnover percentage.
Right. And when we're looking at that, and then you look at that fast break point stat, it's interesting to me. So I think they push the ball so fast. When they rebound, they will immediately turn and push and try to get the ball down court really quickly. So maybe fast breaks that are being created in slightly different ways than what we might typically think about them. Let's dive into some of the players, then we'll get into kind of the different styles of play and specific matchups and how we see it playing out. I guess just from a guard wing room here, I think obviously starting with Jeremy Fears, really solid point guard in the Big Ten, averaging 7.3 points, 2 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. Also shooting decent from 3 at around 38%, but not necessarily a guy that's going to put up really high volume from outside, only really 0.9 per game. Recently, right, Jace Richardson really coming onto the scene, a freshman that has a famous NBA dad in Jason Richardson that was obviously awesome in his time at Michigan State, up to 10.3 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 1.8 assists. He's really the guy that's going to take some volume threes and shoots well from outside at 38%. And then Jaden Akins, the leading scorer on this team with 13.2 points, 3.6 rebounds, 1.5 assists. Relative to the other two, not the 3-point shooter, only averaging 29% on the year. Joe, give me your thoughts on Fears, Richardson, and Akins to start this.
Yeah, Fears is your prototypical like pass first Izzo point guard. He is tough. He is going to push the ball and he's going to create for others. He is not really looking to score ever. And the Illinois game, it really stood out. They put Ben Hummerkaus on him. They put Merez Johnson on him. They put Avicic on him. And they basically stood at the 12-foot mark and said, hey, shoot the ball. Like, try it. And Fears didn't, and he kind of got played off the floor a little bit with that. But that's like elite passer, probably, I don't know, second. He's probably just the second best passer in the Big Ten behind Braden, or second, third, I guess, off the top of my head. And that's what he does. And then he's a pretty good defender. Just like that's you can kind of just say that for basically everybody across the board, especially on the perimeter. Like, solid defender, aggressive, going to dig into the ball. They don't force an insane amount of turnovers, but they still just apply pressure that way. Jace Richardson's, to me, just the best scorer on this team. And he's starting to finally get the minutes to reflect it. He's played 26, 33, and 35 in the last 3. He had not played more than 25 minutes in a game before that. Started those, like, really smooth jumper, can attack, can get downhill, has good athleticism, can get to the rim, not like a crazy facilitator, but like can make the right play. He is the one guy that I think's statistically at least a 3-level score this year. I still, we'll get to Akins in a sec. I still don't want him shooting open threes, but the percentage obviously isn't there to reflect that. But yeah, Richardson's the dude. Like we can talk about matchups later. I'm interested to see what they do because that's who you want. I think you want CJ on him, but then that means one of Smith or Lawyer has to take Fears, and Fears pushes the ball, make or miss. Like you talk about, right, reboundings and outlets. It could be a make. They'll, after Purdue scores on them, MSU will have the ball across and the other 3-point line in 3 seconds and just get into their offense. And that's a lot of what Fears does. Akins not shooting the ball well this year, 29%, but he's a career 36% on nearly 500 attempts. Like one of those guys, I think Klesmit was the one I would say for last game, right? Where it's like, well, yes, this year he's just not shooting well, but you don't necessarily want him to get good looks from 3 because he can knock him down. Another guy, good athleticism, works well in the mid-range, can get to the rim, solid defender, really good defender, honestly, probably a all defense type defender for the Big Ten. So there's going to be a lot of overlap with a lot of these players and how they play, but I think, right, Richardson's best scorer, Akins best defender, and also a solid scorer. Fears is a pass-first point guard that's really good at that.
All right. And yeah, like you said, Jace scares me. Like if there's one guy on this team that in terms of just, ISOing and going one-on-one and breaking our perimeter defenders down, Richardson's ability, just in terms of being able to be shifty, being acrobatic, he made an unbelievable layup in the game the other day, just showing incredible athleticism to take it to the hole and score. He's the one guy that really concerns me from that standpoint. Guards that really want to get downhill, other than Richardson, Aiken still puts up a decent amount of 3-point attempts, but I guess where their scoring is coming from is more by getting downhill and getting into the paint. We'll get into it more later, but as we kind of think about this team, I think in my head coming in before I started really kind of looking at the stats and going back and watching a little bit of film was really worried about these guards getting in the paint and scoring kind of one-on-one. But this is a team that does rely on assists to score a lot of their field goals, right? So assists per field goal made 63.5%, which is 7th in the country. So not necessarily a team that's going to just try to ISO their guards on Purdue, right?
Yeah, I mean, they will at times for sure. They love just running pin downs and things like that. So it's not an ISO, but they run an off ball pin down where he curls and then just can create from there. And so it's still an assist, right? Even if it's a 1 or 2 dribbles generally, but like they will have times that they can just say, hey, we're going to go. But a lot of it is really more creating off ball first. And then from there, using that advantage to then get to their looks, which they're really, really good at.
Right. But not like in a Tyson Walker way, like a few years ago, right? Where he could just kind of go one-on-one a little bit more.
Yeah. Nobody of that level.
Right. Big men in the room, based on recent start, Jackson Kohler, 8.2 points a game, big time rebounder at 7.8, 1.3 assist, a real high energy guy that really brings it on the glass. And then Shimon Zapala, 5 points and 4.8 rebounds per game, a transfer that originally started at Utah State and then went to Longwood, a 5th-year senior at 6'11". Big man room has kind of been attacked over the last few years by Michigan State fans as not being up to par. What are your thoughts on the 2 big men that are going to start for Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, Zapala's been honestly solid in his job is, which is 10 to 15 minutes of energy, maybe convert or dunk or 2 around the rim. Has better hands than they've had like last year in the big man room. It's not like he's, they're not going to throw the ball into the post to him that much. He's not really, I don't know if he's really scored outside of the paint the entire year. Big body though, can move fairly well, not like awesome, but fairly well. He's going to be hedging just like Michigan State does. Rebounds the ball pretty well, physical. And with Michigan State playing kind of the platoon that they do, he's going to play hard for 10 to 15 minutes a game. Like he is There's no taking plays off, nothing like that. It is 10 to 15 minutes of all out. Like, I am going to play as hard as I physically can. And then Kohler's the one that's like, he started out really strong, hasn't really super popped, but then against Illinois had the best game of his career. 23 points, 10 rebounds, 5 of 8 shooting. Did go 4 or 5 from 3, and he's 9 of 18 from 3 in Big Ten play. It's enough where you have to at least consider, but I still think you live with him taking jumpers over getting in the post. Really good post footwork. They will throw the ball into him in the post a lot. Wants to get to the right hook, just like TKR. And just an awesome, like maybe the best rebounder in the conference. He's not overly athletic. He's not, I don't think, overly strong, but he just puts himself in the right spot every single time, crashes hard, and just going to fight for rebounds. And that's what he's going to do. Decent, solid rim protector too. I think he's their best big this year is where I've kind of come to.
No, I think I would agree with you 100% there. And obviously does have the ability and will step outside from time to time, but a team that relies as much as they do on that rebounding advantage, like you said, to play the margins, just such a huge role there. As we move to the backups, there's been a lot of teams here recently where we've been like, all right, we're going to talk about these 3 guys, and then you might mention 2 real quick. This is not a team that is built that way. 5 other guys that will get a decent amount of minutes out there. So let's start with Trey Holloman, Frankie Fiddler, and Cohen Carr. Holloman comes in averaging 8.5 points a game, 2 rebounds, 3.9 assists. So a good facilitator that's a junior at 6'2". You've got Frankie Fiddler, the transfer from Omaha, averaging 7.7 points a game, 3.6 rebounds. 6'7" senior who's not shot the ball well from outside, shooting about 17% from 3 on the year. And then the uber athletic Cohen Carr, who is always good for a highlight reel type of dunk some point in the game, coming in at 8.2 points, 3.4 rebounds. You just like keep reading these off, and it's 8 points, 7 points, 9 points, 10 points. Just a lot of balance. Maybe not a go-to guy on this team, although that Richardson might be emerging more and more that way as the year progresses. Thought on those 3 guys off the bench.
Yeah, Holloman, I mean, he started most of the year. It's been recently that he's gone to the bench. Just a solid, just solid. Another good defender, streaky shooter, I would say. Like he can knock him down in bunches. He can also miss in bunches. Really, another guy that I don't think in terms of running the offense, there's like a gigantic drop off from Fears to Holloman. Obviously, Fears is a better passer, better facilitator, but Holloman just has a little more athleticism to him, a little bit more self-creating scoring ability, can catch and shoot like that. That's just kind of what he does. Fiddler hasn't been great for them this year, but a lot of it's just shots aren't falling, and at some point you just expect them to fall, but they just continue to not. And right, he's a guy that at times can be high usage. Other games he's just not really in the rotation. I mean, he played 9 minutes against Illinois after playing 22 against Indiana and having 12 points. Like, just kind of he's one guy that's hit or miss game to game. I don't think he's like a crazy defender, but does his job, gets some open looks, just hasn't quite knocked him down. And then, like you said, Cohen Carr, crazy athletic. And that's where a lot of what he brings is from. It is just being able to cut. You cannot lose him off ball, because if you do for a half second, then the ball will be in the rim and his head will be above the rim as he does that. Shooting 78% at the rim on 73 attempts, 45% in the paint, and then he is 2 or 5 for 19, it looks like, outside of the paint. So that's what he wants to do. Slash. He's also been a guy that now can, catch 1-2 dribble and get to the rim. And then defensively, the athleticism shows up. He can help protect the rim. He can guard on the perimeter some. He's played the 3, he's played the 4 some. It just kind of depends on their lineup, but especially if he plays the 3, it'll be an interesting matchup, just because like Purdue can kind of ignore him on the perimeter, but at the same time, Purdue has like nobody close to him athletically. I guess Colvin,
right?
Sort of, but even then, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of slashing and like slashing to the basket for a big dunk or a big alley-oop, to me, Cam's maybe the closest in that regard. And actually, similarly, like Cohen really isn't that great with the ball in his hand in terms of creating his own. Like I said, has to get those point slashing or getting a putback dunk or something like that. So certainly a body that everybody has to find out there when it comes time to rebound, so you don't get one put on your head coming over top of you. Two big men then. To round out, I guess, kind of the normal rotation, Xavier Booker averaging 6 points a game, 2.7 rebounds, a sophomore that's 6'11", former 5-star who probably most Michigan State fans would say hasn't necessarily lived up to that 5-star status yet. Will shoot threes outside, but is only shooting 22% on the year. And then Carson Cooper, a junior at 6'11", 5 points, 4.8 rebounds. No real outside game to him. That's not what he's in there for. Not going to pick and pop with that guy. As you look at those two bigs and their contributions to these teams, what does Purdue need to worry about?
Yeah, Booker's a guy that has good athleticism. He can be a guy that can, especially against slower fours, kind of try to drive on them and take them to the rim. Not like a staple of his game, but he can do that. Really good athleticism, really good rim protector coming from that. Like you said, he has not shot the ball well, but he is willing to shoot, which honestly in of itself is a kind of rare thing on Michigan State to shoot from the perimeter like that. Just probably hasn't quite had the year that many were hoping from him, me included, in terms of kind of taking that sophomore leap. Carson Cooper, kind of this, not the same player as Zabala, but like similar, just workhorse, convert around the rim. He might be featured a little bit more in post-ups. Really good screener, I think, too, and also a good defender. He's maybe their best rim protector on the team. And right, like I don't know if he moves ultra well, but he's a guy that can hedge and then he recovers, and that's what Michigan State wants to do, and he just fits that. Probably second best rebounder on the team behind Kohler. I mean, all three of those bigs, Kohler, Zapala, and Cooper, are all awesome rebounders. So just another one of those guys. Like, you have to match his energy on the floor, and like Zapala, Cooper can play anywhere from 10 to, I mean, he plays a little bit more. Cooper's more like 15 to 20, 25, but he's going to play hard in those minutes.
Okay. As we kind of transition now, after kind of talking about all those players, into maybe what Michigan State's going to do, how the matchup is going to roll. Michigan State, we've mentioned it across several guys individually, but a team that comes in just not shooting the three ball well at all. 29.1% on the year per KenPom. That's good for 354th in the country out of 364 teams. If you look at the other 3-point components in terms of 3-point attempts per field goal attempts, 332nd in the country. 3-pointers in terms of points distribution of total points scored in a game, 359th in the country. It's been well documented. This team has really struggled from outside, and like you said, even the willingness to take those threes at time. So we know, other than Richardson, really a team that doesn't necessarily do that well. How will this Michigan State team score? What do you expect to see them try to do offensively?
They're going to run pin downs there. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what the matchups are. But if I don't know who I trust from Purdue to try to get around staggered pin downs, is Akins and Richardson curl to 15 feet and then convert from there. Purdue, I guess, will probably try to switch a lot. Everything probably not involving TKR, and maybe that'll help some. Just to try to, but then your switching has to be on point. Michigan State will also just run up pick and rolls, especially with fears in. They are also going to, like we said, push the ball. And so I think priority one for Purdue is just making Michigan State get in the half court, because if you can do that, that's where Michigan State hasn't been great. Like, they haven't been bad by any means, but they haven't been great in that capacity. And so I think that's what you want to do. Option number one, get them in the half court. And then from there, though, they're going to run pin downs. They're going to run post ups, and they're just going to try to kick and drive until they get a look. Purdue is a team that forces teams to take lots of threes with their new defense. I guess it's not even new at this point, right? It feels like yesterday when that happened, but it's almost 2 months at this point. But right, Michigan State just doesn't take them. It's not their strength, so they're not going to. They'll take a good chunk from the mid range, but they like to get obviously into the paints and rebound a lot. So got it, like off ball awareness. We saw them get burned multiple times. CJ, Braden, Lawyer, like all of them get burned off ball against Wisconsin. That can't happen against Michigan State because they will run actions. you got to be on point. And if you don't, they're going to curl and get to the rim or get to a 15-footer where they've shot the ball pretty, not like awesome, but fairly well from the mid-range.
Yeah. And, as we talk about like the Wisconsin game versus this matchup against Michigan State, I think it gets that much harder, right, in terms of keeping people out of the paint when multiple guys are knocking down threes like they were in that Wisconsin team game, especially when you have a guy like Tanjay who's knocking them down with his size as well. And then you've got everybody chasing and you got rotation and everybody's really trying to close out because everybody's banging threes down, and it's that much harder to keep people out of the paint in that regard. And I do think as you just look at this matchup, unless Michigan State, has a little bit of an anomaly of a game, I've always liked Painter when he has, and I've talked about this before, but I've always liked Painter when you look at a team and they have somebody that you can play off of or that you can kind of scheme to of now I can kind of play 4-on-5 a little bit, or a team that you look at and say, they really don't do this one thing well. Purdue and Painter tend to come up with stuff to really force teams to try to do the thing that they don't do well and beat them that way and try to shut everything else off. So I would expect, right, that we would see that they're going to continue to do what they've been doing, that they're really going to try to do everything they can to keep guards from getting downhill and getting into the paint and really, really force this team to prove that they can hit from outside before they do anything differently.
I'm with you. Like, they're going to try. I honestly have a lot of concerns of how they do it. Because it isn't just, drive and show help. We're running, off of 2 staggered pin downs and curling to 15 feet, where now Braden Smith's trailing by 5 feet, and now his first switching is he's showing. If they switch, is MSU immediately sealing that and posting up, where their bigs aren't awesome, but they can convert over Braden Smith, and just things like that. Does Jace Richardson, can he just jab and go? Like, I'm not saying MSU is just going to walk all over Purdue, but because defense has to be on point, because I don't think this is necessarily an offense that's you can just be like, oh, we're just going to pack it in the paint, unless you just go straight up zone, which you could.
Which Purdue
unless you do that, then I don't think it's like Michigan State runs their offense designed to not get 3-point looks. And so it's going to be a very interesting matchup and scheme to see kind of how Purdue counters that, and if Michigan State can respond.
Now, you mentioned the matchup in terms of personnel and what Purdue might do with their perimeter defense. As I was looking through this, I was very much had the same thought of you of like, kind of feels like CJ's got to be on Jace, and that's not what they've done. They've put CJ on the initiator of the offense and had him jamming the entire way. And I don't know, maybe Painter looks at it and says, even though Jace is kind of shifty guard that can get downhill and score on all 3 levels, and maybe the biggest weapon that they have on that team, maybe he still looks at it and says Fears is the one that makes everything go and gets everything going super fast and still wants CJ jamming. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how they do decide to match up with that from a personnel standpoint, because in my head, the CJ Richardson matchup makes a lot of sense.
I agree. I don't think you want Braden on Fears. And now Fears, right, he's only going to play 20 to 25 minutes a game also. It's not like he's playing full 40. Holloman will still push the ball when he's in as well. In an ideal world, I think you probably put Lawyer on Fears and just go under every ball screen and basically try to turn Fears into a scorer. I don't know if you can do that, though, because that means you have to trust Lawyer jamming full court, and I don't think you necessarily want that. I honestly would not be shocked if Braden, CJ, or Fletch any of them start on Fears. I think there's valid points for any one of those 3 to do it. They're also going to, I assume, switch everything. And right when we talk about those pin downs that I talked about and off-ball stuff, I would assume they just switch everything, which is going to be their counter. And so then at that point, there is a little bit too of you start out on a guy, but is that who you end up with? So everybody's just going to have to be on point in terms of knowing where they need to be and just trying to knowing their personnel, know who you're matched up with and what they do well.
Now, I do think as we look at this, it's also going to be obviously really, really important when Jakari and Miles get into the game. we can't just talk about the three starters. On the perimeter, I think it's going to be really, really essential that Jakari and Miles do well defensively also. And, depending on how the game goes, may see more or less of them. We've seen Painter, depending on the situation and who's having success defensively or offensively, may give more minutes here or more minutes there as the game goes on. On the other side of this, then, we've seen many times in the past, even with Zach Edey or Travion Williams or whoever it was, that Michigan State just has kind of at many times gone with the attitude of like, look, if your big wants to go for 40, okay, we're going to shut everybody else down. They do a nice job defending the 3-point line. I think they're 8th in the country in terms of 3-point defense from a percentage standpoint. I would expect to see more of that same, and really good chance that TKR is going to have the chance here to have a big, big night. But then you got to come through and do it too, and see Michigan State, whether they try to make everybody else around TKR and Braden beat them in this game. I guess, what are your thoughts about what Michigan State does defensively? And then on the flip side of that, how do you think Purdue can attack this defense?
Yeah, I assume they're going to stay one-on-one in the post, at least to start. It's just kind of what they do. And then if TKR gets cooking, maybe they switch. But, I mean, he stayed one-on-one with Edey, so I don't know if he's going to double TKR. So that's going to be number one, TKR in the post. What does that look like? Can he just get one-on-one coverage, or do they try to help off of like First or Heidi and just live from there? Obviously, we know Purdue's going to run pick and rolls. Michigan State, they high hedge. It isn't a hedge to trap. It is a hedge more to just try to push the ball, handle their back, and not allow him to turn the corner. I think Brain's gotten much better at that in terms of just handling that. In theory, that leads to a lot of short rolls, but Michigan State does they do a good job of helping and then recovering, where they'll tag the roll and then still get back out and defend the 3-point line. They contest a lot of threes, but they do force teams to make a lot of take a lot of threes. So, right, those are the two. I don't see a scenario really in this game where Purdue wins without TKR having a big game. I think he's probably the most important, and then obviously Braden just needs to handle the pressure and then get to his looks and just get past the. He had a bad shooting game. It happens. He's had a couple of those this year. I think he's bounced back pretty much every time. Just quickly, he bounces back, so I would expect that as well. Going to be a game where Michigan State tries to, they just don't want to give up shots at the rim. They're fine giving up mid-range shots. They're fine giving up some threes. They just got athleticism everywhere, so they contest everything. And that's where Purdue being more one-on-one, two-on-two could help them, that if they can take the help out of it and just turn it into Braden and TKR like that, we've seen that can just be very successful.
And that seems like the strategy, or I guess in terms of what Michigan State's going to likely give a little bit easier for Purdue to be able to find scoring. We've seen it over and over again the last few years. I feel like it's going to head that direction again. Obviously, going to have to still get points and buckets from other guys around those two. Going to have a bounce back game from Braden. Obviously, big assist numbers in this last game, but not necessarily a great game outside of that. So, this Michigan State team, one of the things that worries me a little bit is they've got some bodies to throw at TKR, right? They've got really, in my mind, 3 guys that could be defending him at any given point in time. They're going to platoon. So in my mind, I'm sure they'd be okay if each one of those guys gives a few fouls on TKR as it goes through. And depending on the game, TK has been hit or miss from the free throw line. So is it one of those games where, he was on a 16 in a row free throw shooting streak? Is he having that kind of a trend in this game? Or is it one of those games where he's closer to 60, 65% from the free throw line? Watching those guys platoon in on him and all giving him a shot, maybe each of them picking up a few fouls here and there, worries me just a little bit potentially.
Yeah, they'll try to wear him down. They're going to send him to the free throw line. Michigan State's aggressive. They are going to be physical. That's their identity. That's their MO. And TKR's just got to knock him down. He's 71% in conference play from the free throw line, which I'd take TKR going 7 of 10 from the free throw line. I would sign up for that every game from TKR if you could just guarantee that. No, that's a good shout out, because it's at some point he's just probably most likely going to have to knock some down.
Yeah. At the same time, a little bit, just as we talk about that platoon system, we've seen some lineups, and I don't think we saw it against Wisconsin. I know we saw it the game before that, and I think we saw it the game before that as well, where there were some stretches in the second half, well, end of first half, towards the end of the first half, and at some point in the second half, where it was Braden and 4 guys off the bench. Fletch wasn't in. It was like Braden, Jakari, Raleigh, Cam, who am I missing? Miles on the court all at the same time. This game scares me a little bit just in terms of Michigan State's depth. And like in my head, I'm almost like, all right, when we get to the later in the rotation before he comes back and brings his 5 starters in to kind of close out halves, almost feeling like Purdue needs to have a little bit of a buffer, because on paper, it looks like Michigan State's bench outperforms Purdue's bench.
Yeah. Michigan State's bench outperforms every bench in the country. They're number 2 in bench points per game. Like, that's what they do. We only saw Burgess for like a minute last game, and I'm going to be honest, I don't remember at all like what that minute was.
Right.
So yeah, it could be a game where we just don't even see Burgess at all either, especially if TKR can stay out of foul trouble, which is going to be a bigger ask. But no, I'm like, I said on one of the post-game shows, like, I'm just not a big fan of that lineup. Don't love Purdue going to it. And Michigan State, when they rotate to their bench, they're not really dropping off too much in terms of talent and production.
Yeah, and to that point, you bring up something really important as well, and just talking about subs versus subs, but also this is a game just in terms of the physicality that's going to be played in East Lansing on that day, with the amount that they rebound and how hard they fight for rebounds, where Caleb and TKR could pick up some fouls. And I think for this game, especially because of the way Michigan State plays and where Purdue probably can make hay the best in this game, is if TKR gets in early foul trouble, like we've seen in a couple of games, that could lead to some real big offensive struggles.
Yeah, especially because then it's at that point, guys got to knock down threes. CJ, Fletch, Jakari, Colvin, like, they got to knock down threes at any looks that they get, especially when TKR is out. Even when TKR is in, but especially when he's out, like, got to find offense in other ways, because I assume they just kind of load up on Braden if that's like when TKR is out.
Yeah. Keys to the game. What does Purdue have to do to win?
Not get obliterated on the glass. I don't even know if they got to win it. They can't get dominated in that. Limit fast break points as much as possible, and then obvious one, but like, just knock down some shots. Like, you can knock down some shots, alleviate a little bit of pressure off of Braden and TKR. I think if you do those 3 things, that you put yourself in a very good spot to win.
Yeah, so I'm going to go number 1. Braden, TKR, and Caleb have to be able to stay on the floor. I think it's absolutely critical that the 5 starters and then a couple of guys off the bench have the ability to stay in this game, but especially those 3 to me. I think what we've seen in terms of Caleb's ability to contribute from a rebounding standpoint, if they are going to stay relatively even rebounding, I think it's absolutely imperative that he's going to get subbed out, right? But that he doesn't have to sub out specifically for foul trouble. And then from a scoring standpoint, that TKR can stay on the court, because I do think that massively changes. We know there's not really necessarily a secondary post scoring presence that is going to be like a go-to feeding off of that pick and roll quite in the same way. So I think those 2 things are imperative. And then for me, I'm 100% with you. Like, Purdue has to get back. And in a game where it looked like we were kind of dragging in our legs a little bit the last game, that worries me a little. Like, you guys are going to have to get back quick and be ready and have your head on a swivel all the time. I don't know if you saw the stat that Cobra Stats put out about, like, that stat was wild to me, just in terms of the disadvantage so far this season. I think it's almost an extra day rest per team that we've played, like 0.89 days or something extra rest.
Team has 0.9 days rest, just to clarify for them.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
That's what I meant. And then we've seen some big matchups a couple of times now where teams have had a whole week off as we go. And now Purdue had a week off earlier this year. They're getting ready before too long to get another week off. So that may balance out by the end of the season. But right now, Purdue really needs to find their legs and their energy for this one, coming off of this last game, especially.
Yeah, and you got 4-day 4-day break before IU, and then a 4-day break after IU. So like you have one game in 9 days after this game. Gotta dig deep. Gotta find a will and a way to get this one. Especially if you want to compete for a Big Ten title. Like you said, it's not a guarantee. It's not like they're done. They're eliminated. It just means they have zero margin for error and also need help from a lot of help from other teams at that point. And you'd rather just be in the position of 4 losses. Maybe Michigan loses because I think they play. Oh no, they don't play till Friday against Michigan State. So, but you beat Michigan State. Michigan State beats Michigan on Friday. Like now you sit at 1 game back with 4 games left. So it's obviously every game at this point in the season is really big, but can't overemphasize how important this one is for Purdue. So, do you have anything else you want to throw out there?
Is Purdue going to win?
I don't feel great. I'm going to be honest.
This is where I'm at. Purdue's coming off 2 losses. It's Matt Painter. It's Braden Smith. Braden didn't have a great game last game. Always bounces back and usually has a big game after a bad game. I think they just figure out a way to do it. As long as they can stay out of foul trouble, I think they figure out a way to pull it off.
Fair. I think it's going to be a close game regardless, and then it's just got to make the shots down the stretch. And Purdue, I expect Purdue to put themselves in the spot to win. Just got to go out and convert. So we will be live after the game. It is a 7:00 Eastern time tip on Peacock on tomorrow, February 18th, or today, depending on when you're listening to this. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications. You'll get notified as soon as we do go live. Come join the chat, hang out, and listen to us talk Purdue hoops. And hopefully it's going to be talking about a Purdue win, and we'll be talking about how Purdue got on track. But regardless, we'll be live. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you then.